Ron Taylor is an innovative and visionary leader of RAM Computer Systems Services, which has been a winner of the Daily Star's Best of Tandem Ho Awards 9 times. He's been a virtual part of the Hammond business community for nearly 20 years. I didn't know you were that old. He served on the Hammond Chamber of Commerce Board, as well as a past president of this Rotary Club. He has, which are just a couple of things that helped him secure his future 40 under 40 award. He's a proud husband to the beautiful and amazing Sarah Taylor. I agree. And he has 2 boys, Hugh and Robert.
Yep.
Please welcome Ron.
Thank you very much. Michelle asked me for a quick bio introduction, and I assure you that was my tongue was planted firmly in my cheek when I wrote that up. I was trying to be funny on how grandiose I was being. So, Bitcoin, magic internet money or digital gold? As my wife or all my friends can tell you that for the last few months I've been pretty obsessed with this topic. And if you are unlucky enough to be cornered by me at a party after a few beers, you definitely know what I think about it. But real quick, before I really get into it, I want to just do a quick short history of of Bitcoin. October 31st, 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto released the Bitcoin white paper, which is basically information on what Bitcoin would be, how it would work, and how to participate in it. A little later the next year, January 3rd, 2009, the network went live and the first block was mined. And I'll explain what that is. In 2008, there's a momentous thing happened. Someone made the first transaction with Bitcoin. They paid 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 Papa John's pizzas. That today is worth $400 million. In 2010, Satoshi handed over control of the Bitcoin network to someone else and has never been heard from since. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. If it's a person or a group of people, there's a lot of speculation. One of the people that people speculate is Elon Musk. Some people think it's the US government, but no one knows, and maybe we'll never know. We may know when Bitcoin reaches about 182,000 per coin, and at that point he will surpass the current richest man in the world to become the richest person in the world, because they have about 1 million Bitcoins in their wallet that they have never touched. Soon after, the entire control of the network, the Bitcoin protocol, was handed over to the world as a gift, so no one controls it. It is completely decentralized. Anyone can contribute or be a part of the network. Now, before I get into some of the technical details, I'm curious, how many people think they have an understanding of what cryptocurrencies are? 3. How many own Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency? 3. All right. That tells me that we're still early. This is kind of like getting in, being on the internet in 1994, 1995. So, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a protocol. Just like the English language is a protocol. It's an agreed upon system. What's another protocol that you use? The internet is a protocol that you use every single day. TCP/IP plus HTTPS, which you guys can see every time you go to a website. Those are protocols that work together to give us another protocol, the World Wide Web. So there's some examples of the protocol. Bitcoin is another protocol that uses the internet on top of that, just like the other ones. Anyone can participate in the Bitcoin protocol by having either a miner, doing mining, or running a node. A node is basically a miner that doesn't do the mining. It just kind of keeps the network going, sending transactions and data back and forth. What is mining? Mining is how transactions are verified on the network. and the transactions are added to what's called the blockchain. Bitcoins are stored in a wallet. And here's an example of a wallet address. See that big long number? That's a wallet address. So every Bitcoin is in a wallet. You can have a wallet with lots of Bitcoin, or you can have all your Bitcoin spread out in multiple wallets. Your wallet can it just lives in the Bitcoin network. You don't have to have a physical wallet. You don't have to go through an exchange. You can be completely independent. You can download the Bitcoin software on your computer, create a new wallet, mine Bitcoin, which isn't profitable right now for a person to do at their house because of electricity costs, or you can send Bitcoin to it wherever you purchased somewhere else. I could purchase it from Joe, give Joe some money for Bitcoin, and he can send it directly to my wallet. No one else involved. No one knows the transaction happened. As long as those wallet addresses have been kept anonymous, no one would know that we did it. Now, the wallets are protected with SHA-256 cryptology, and that's where the cryptocurrency gets its name. What does that mean? Well, just like the HTTPS, what keeps your transactions from your computer to your bank's computer when you're doing banking or shopping on Amazon is the same thing that protects Bitcoin. So it's pretty much impossible to crack. I found this nice little tidbit that kind of explains how hard it would be to crack that. If you could process 1 trillion private keys per second, it would take more than 1 million times the age of the universe to count them all. Even worse, just enumerating these keys would consume more than the total energy output of the sun for 32 years. So if that were to be cracked to get your Bitcoin, we'd have a much, much bigger problem because right now our entire world is built on that security of the internet. So Bitcoin would be the least of your problem. Bitcoin works on the blockchain. This is the real innovative part of Bitcoin because there have been attempts to have an e-cash or an e-gold before, and the downfall has always been how do you keep track of it? Well, you would have a central party, someone who owns this protocol, to keep track of all these transactions. Yeah, that works, but that's kind of just what we have now, the banking system. So why do that? So if I want to send money, Alice wants to send money to Bob, he goes through his bank, and the bank adds it to their ledger, and they keep track of it in their system. And the banks all talk to each other, and they all kind of know where all the money is, who owns what. Well, if you want to send money from Alice to Bob on Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, instead of one ledger that one person keeps track of it, there's a ledger that everyone keeps track of. And every person that participates in it as a miner verifies that transaction. And once enough miners verify that transaction enough times, it gets added to a block. And how do you add it to the block? Well, how do you verify the transaction? Yeah.
That was my question. What do you mean by verifying a transaction?
Okay, so I'm on the Bitcoin network. I want to send someone Bitcoin. I send that to the network. The network gets it, and then they go through the verification process. Verification process is actually pretty simple. I don't know the actual really nuts and bolts details of how it does it. I just know they verify it somehow, and anyone can verify it, but the real key magic of it is what's called the proof of work, where if I want to verify a transaction and add it to a block, how do I know that it's a valid transaction? Well, I have to spend money on electricity to run my miner to add it to the blockchain. That gets very expensive nowadays because there's so many participants and so many transactions. I have to compete with all the other miners to do that. So I'm spending a lot of money to verify those transactions to get it added to the block. And if you do the math, which I haven't, but I've seen other people who have, if you do the math, it just basically is not profitable for you to try to get invalid transaction added to the block.
So,
because of the electricity.
with the verifying of the transaction, is that almost like being part of the trade? If
Yes.
we were to think about.
That's right. So if you verify the transaction and you mine, there's two ways to get money out of it. You can get a transaction fee. That you can make some money off of that, but most of the people, they make their money off of mining by getting what's called block rewards, which is the Bitcoin. That's where the Bitcoins come from. The miners get the Bitcoins first as a reward for doing the transactions and verifying the transactions. When it first started, you could have just a regular computer and mine thousands of Bitcoin a day. But as it grows, it becomes harder and harder to do that. And you have to spend more and more money on electricity to do that, and that's what secures it. Is more people that participate, it becomes more and more secure because it costs so much more money to try to put an invalid transaction on the network. Now, if I were to buy a miner and plug it up at my house and pay the energy rate for electricity to run the miner, I'm not going to make any money. There's just too many people. There's too many other people that are doing it at such scale that it becomes uncompetitive for smaller people to do it. You need either do it at scale or at having free electricity. But you can participate.
What is electricity?
I know, we gotta
Yeah,
get
that's what I want to know.
What do you mean, electricity?
Yeah, like electricity.
Power,
like
electricity,
power.
electricity. Yeah, power.
You mean,
Like from energy.
Plug into this, runs a computer.
Right, it runs your computer, it runs your mining computer. So a miner is just a computer running the Bitcoin software.
So,
how much would that cost?
Just one example, you can buy one Bitcoin mining, they're specialized computers now. But you say you spend $10,000 on a specialized mining computer, and you had free electricity, it'd take you about a year to recoup your costs on buying that. But then now you have to pay for the electricity to run it, which can be that $10,000 one probably would cost about, it'd take about 3,000 kilowatts to run that, which is quite a bit.
A lot of that work's being done in like Iceland now, where they have geothermal electricity, so.
Yeah.
and it's
Solar,
cool.
wind.
They don't have to cool the computers, have these huge grounds full of stuff, just
Yeah.
cranking along all the time.
There's a lot of places right now where oil fields where they have the natural gas that gets escaped. They're just literally burning that gas, and these oil companies are getting hooked up with the mining companies to bring in the Bitcoin mining machines to take that flared gas, turn it into electricity to run the mining. So you could still do it if you had enough miners. You could get rewarded and get some Bitcoin, but generally nowadays, if you wanted to get a few miners, you'd have to join a pool of thousands or hundreds of thousands of other people to get a portion of those Bitcoin rewards.
So Ron, just trying to understand this.
Yeah.
So when you say mining a Bitcoin, you mean you're mining a verification of something that has sold whatever that product or item
Correct.
is. I sold Ron a truck, a 1997 Chevrolet truck. Between you and I've sold it to you using Bitcoin.
Well, it's just a transfer of Bitcoin, but yes. So if I want to send you a Bitcoin, that transaction needs to be verified by people running the Bitcoin software on their computers. And that process of verifying it is called mining, because you're rewarded with a Bitcoin for doing the work, for spending the electricity to run the computer to verify the transaction.
So how long does that process take?
Well, there's a new block created every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes there's a new block. So every 10 minutes someone's getting 6 Bitcoin. I think right now it changes, it fluctuates as part of the protocol. Currently, every 10 minutes about 6 Bitcoins are created and rewarded to the people that are verifying the transactions. So there's a lot of, your chances of getting one of those Bitcoins is low unless you're tied in with a whole bunch of other people. And if you're not tied in and you're not getting one of those Bitcoin as a reward, then you're just getting paid back with transaction fees. Because when I send Bitcoin, it's not free, I have to pay a fee for that transaction.
And does the recipient have to also pay a fee?
Typically, the recipient actually does pay the transaction fee. So all the transactions are verified, and they're all grouped together into a block. And invalid transactions are discarded. And every time there's a new block, every 10 minutes, it gets added on to the last block that was mined, like a chain. And that's where you get the term blockchain. So
Which makes it harder to crack.
makes it
right?
harder to crack, and at any time, anyone can go back and see every cent transaction that's ever happened, ever. And that will continue to happen. So in 100 years, you'll be able to go back and see every transaction that happened today, and it's completely transparent as long as you know who owns those wallets.
Except that it's not transparent as to who started it.
Correct.
And you really don't know who owns the wallets because they're not gonna take it,
Correct.
because they're trying to hide all those transactions. The
Some-
government really can't tax them.
Some people are trying to, just like with cash, people try to avoid the government with cash, and they successfully do. But the majority of money that gets transacted in the world goes through banks and other institutions that have know your customer laws. And most of the Bitcoin transactions that happen now happens through exchanges, just like banks, and they have know your customer laws as well. So you could do everything anonymously and not through the exchanges, but it's so much easier, and the majority of it happens through exchanges, just like with the banking system. So it's analogous to cash. Sure, you could do lots of illicit stuff with cash now too, but it's hard, and it's much easier, and most people are just going to do it the right way.
So Ron, if I wanted to buy $10,000 of whatever from you,
Yep.
and I'm going to pay you $10,000 in cryptocurrency,
Yep.
are you at risk of a week from now that $10,000 not being worth $10,000?
Yeah, just like with gold or any other commodity, the price can fluctuate. So sure, absolutely. The good thing though is I don't have to worry about that. Once that transaction is added to the blockchain, it's forever. So if I were to send you money at a traditional banking system, that money could come out of my account somehow, and I would be, depending on what happened, that could be a problem. But it could also be a problem because if I try to send you that money and it goes to the wrong address, somebody got some free money and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, it's the same thing with Venmo or anything else.
Venmo or cash.
Transfers, yeah.
Mailed it to the wrong address.
Yeah.
Right. If I put cash in an envelope, send it to the wrong address, same thing.
And try to get it back from Venmo, by the way.
Right.
This stuff is all, that super encryption that you talk about,
Yep.
and is a double-edged sword. There's a guy who has $200 million
Yep.
in his account, and there's only a certain number of times you can try a password, and he's down to his last 2 times for that password, and the money is gone. Literally, he can't ever get back into his
I
account.
think that's partially true. The limit on how many times they can put in the password is not part of the Bitcoin protocol. That's part of the wallet he used.
Right.
So you could use a wallet that didn't have that limitation. But you're right. If you don't have your password, you are forever locked out.
Or, yeah.
How do you cash this? Chuck? How do you cash in your Bitcoin
You would go through an exchange.
and get money?
You would go through an exchange.
Is there a penalty or is there a fee?
Yeah, there's a fee. Just like if you were to use an exchange to buy and sell stocks, for example, you pay a fee for that. So if you're going through a Bitcoin exchange, you pay a fee for that.
Well, what kind of transactions are utilizing this now?
Not a lot, to be honest with you. Not a lot of people are using it for transactions, and I'll actually get to that. Let me go through it and I'll answer some questions. So that's kind of the technology part of it. Let's talk a little bit about the money part of it. Bitcoin is a financial asset. So what makes Bitcoin a good financial asset or store of value? Well, let's think about gold. Gold is a very good analogy. It's scarce. It's like gold. Gold is scarce. Although with gold, they're getting more of that out of the ground every day. I think it's something like 2% more gold every year is mined. Not to mention the asteroids that we can start mining that contain trillions and trillions of dollars worth. So that's one thing, is it's scarce. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And the last Bitcoin will be mined in 140 years. It gets increasingly difficult to mine Bitcoin, and the last one will be mined in 140 years, and they'll only ever be 21 million, so it's perfectly scarce. It's the only thing that, this is kind of one of the most important things, is why it's a good financial asset, is because in all of human history, it's been almost impossible to have a commodity, something as a store of value that we could not produce more of. Seashells, gold you can mine more of. Anything that's worth something, as it becomes more valuable, there's more pressure for people to get more or create more of it. You can't create more gold. You can find more gold, because we haven't found it all yet. But everybody already knows there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. So it's almost as if we've already mined all the Bitcoin, because it's already added and calculated into the transaction, the costs and the thought process of valuing it. It's durable, just like with gold. You can't destroy gold. You can melt it down and do things with it, but you can't destroy it. Bitcoin, you can't destroy it. It's math. There's nothing you can do. The only way you could destroy Bitcoin is that you'd have to find every single computer that had a copy of the blockchain and destroy and wipe the hard drive. It's the only way you could possibly destroy your Bitcoin. Or you lose your password. It's fungible. All Bitcoins are exactly the same. Just like with gold, every little piece of gold is exactly the same. It's divisible. You don't have to buy just one Bitcoin. It's divided up into 100 million what's called Satoshis. So, and it's got history, just like with gold. Gold has thousands of years of history. Bitcoin only has 12 years of history. But that's analog versus digital. When you think about how long it takes for me to take a piece of paper from here to China, walking, or with a boat, or even with an airplane, it's a considerable amount of time compared to sending that same information that's on that piece of paper over the internet to China. That's the kind of compression of time we're talking about when we look at the history of Bitcoin. When it comes to the digital age, the internet and computers, 12 years is thousands of years when compared to something analog like gold. My opinion, Bitcoin is better than gold because it has all those advantages, but more. It's easy to store. You want to store $100 million worth of gold? How much gold is in Fort Knox? A few billion dollars? A couple $billion? I mean, Fort Knox is Fort Knox. People know what Fort Knox is for a reason, because it costs a lot of money to guard it, store it, keep track of it, try to transport it. So the Bitcoin, you have it on your digital wallet, and that's it. You don't even have to have a piece of paper with it written down more. If you can remember that wallet address, you don't even have to have a piece of paper to know what that wallet address is. It's easy to transport. If I have that password and that wallet address, all I have to do is memorize it. If for example, we have the luxury of living in America and being free and not having to worry about this, but say if you're in another country where there's civil wars going on and you're on the wrong side of that civil war, and you're part of a minority class that's being oppressed, say you have all of your wealth tied up in gold, or diamonds, or cash, or anything else, and you can't keep it in the bank and transfer it because the government controls all that, and they're going to stop that. Well, if you have, at a certain point, you're only going to be able to carry so much gold out of that country, especially if you're going through some sort of checkpoint. It's going to be really difficult to hide that somewhere. You're going to be very limited on how much you can transport. With Bitcoin, you just have to remember your password, and you can transport hundreds of billions of dollars worth. Fast transactions. If you use Bitcoin as the only layer for your transactions, It's somewhat slow. It takes about 10 minutes to verify. And it costs you about $14 to current price to verify that transaction. But just like you're not going to pay for a car with gold, you're not going to buy a car with Bitcoin on the base Bitcoin layer. What you're going to use is you're going to use a layer on top of that, just like you're not even going to probably use cash because it's inconvenient. You're going to use a credit card. That's a layer on top of the other layers in our monetary system. And Bitcoin has the same thing. Right now, the most popular one is called the Lightning Network, which is a lot like Visa. It can process millions of transactions a second, virtually instantly and virtually free. It's liquid. Right now, there's such a great market for it that I can, on my phone right now, sell all of my Bitcoin in 2 seconds. Somebody's going to buy it. Where the price is, that's a different story. That's price discovery. Price fluctuates with any commodity, just like gold, oil, even your dollar is worth less and more or less depending on when you spend it. Especially with the way that the central banks are printing money right now, your dollar is worth about 15% less than it was last year. It's counterfeit resistant. Since all transactions are verified, you can't have a counterfeit Bitcoin. It's impossible. You have a Bitcoin, it's a Bitcoin. It's a legit Bitcoin. And it's difficult to confiscate or steal. If a criminal came into my house, they couldn't steal my Bitcoin if all I had was the password and I didn't have it written down somewhere for them to get. Unless I told them that password, they wouldn't be able to get it. It's a double-edged sword, sure. If a criminal doesn't want to give the police that password, they're not going to get those things. But I could go bury gold that I stole somewhere too. And if I don't tell you that location of that gold, they're not going to get it either. So what could Bitcoin be worth? Right now, it's currently worth about $39,000 per Bitcoin. A few weeks ago, the high was about $64,000. That was the all-time high. What could it be worth? Well, gold is worth about, the market capitalization of gold, all the gold in the world, is about 10 trillion. I think it's closer to maybe 12 trillion right now. But if, let's say 10 trillion, because it's an easy number, if Bitcoin were to at least match the market capitalization of gold, each Bitcoin would be worth about $500,000. However, if you look at all of the financial products out there that you can invest in, stocks, real estate's about $90 trillion. Or no, about $300 trillion. The U.S. stock market's about $90 trillion. Then you look at all the derivatives on those. You're looking at hundreds of trillions of dollars. And if you look at all the derivatives, on top of the derivatives, your mortgage-backed securities and all these things, the total amount of investable money is about 4 quadrillion. So just matching gold, if Bitcoin is as revolutionary as I think it's going to be, it could be worth millions of dollars a coin in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. If Bitcoin remains as stable and secure as it is now, and another cryptocurrency doesn't come along to replace it, there's no telling what it could be worth. Now, why would it do that? Well, I think, in my opinion, it may not be Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the gold standard right now. It was the first. I gave this analogy earlier. If you think about Coca-Cola, if you were to destroy every building, bottling plant that had Coca-Cola, every can and bottle of Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola would still be worth something. That's what my opinion with Bitcoin is. But cryptocurrency, blockchain, in my opinion, is the technology on par with electricity, the internet, the printing press. It's that revolutionary of an idea and technology for mankind. Any more questions?
Well,
You're right.
kind of a comment more than anything else. Nelson.
Sure.
You brought up a very good point. Bitcoin lost about 40% of its value in a very, but it also gained a 300% right before that. It's
Yep.
it's very volatile right now.
Yes.
So, I mean, you gotta be ready for this. There's a bank out in La Jolla called Silvergate
Yeah.
that deals almost exclusively with that. A friend of mine over in Dallas, they invested heavily in that bank. They had a 10x. The bank gave them a 10x gain in 1 year on their investment. It's 1,000%.
Now, one thing I do want to comment on that is just like, gold has had thousands of years to come to the price it's at now. If you were looking chart a value of gold, it's going to be pretty volatile over that span of time. But since it's digital, you're compressing that. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that volatility in the price discovery because it's still so new. And it's so small, it's still only $1 trillion. Once it gets to 10 trillion, 100 trillion, you're going to see that volatility really.
But I guess where I was really going though, so it's interesting that Dogecoin is much, that's a cryptocurrency named after some guy's dog.
Yeah, Dogecoin, yeah.
Yeah, but for voting and things like that, the technology of blockchain, there's a lot of promise.
Yeah.
Everybody could get their Bitcoin votes, whatever, it's yours on the blockchain, you vote from home. I mean,
Anything you need to keep track of can be kept track of better on blockchain. Independently, transparently, and decentralized and digital.
Just out of curiosity, for 21 million that could possibly be made, do they have any idea how many of those will be just lost? People losing their passwords or whatever, dying.
Yeah, I think right now, I think the estimate right now is about 1 million Bitcoins have been lost.
Oh, right now, $1 million
Yeah.
been lost.
Form of mine, anybody wants to go dig up that old PC at a landfill
Yeah.
in Virginia, if we can track it, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
So if anything, it seems like that make with the supply and demand, that would make it more valuable.
It's going to make it more scarce. As time goes on, people are still going to continue to lose it.
So you don't remember what your password and wallet was.
And it's not probably a small password.
Less than 50.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
I don't know how you buy
That
it.
was amazing, thank you so much, a lot of information. Anybody else have anything for the good of the club? So we will, are you on our motto?
Sir, sir, sir.